Well, it's time for another talk of Richard Linklater, one of the most underrated directors working today. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's movie review of Blue Moon, the newest film from director Richard Linklater. So, leave it to Richard Linklater to do a new film that is about Lorenz Hart, who, of course, is a famous lyricist who worked with, of course, Rodgers and Hammerstein. And imagine that he does what Richard Linklater does and focuses on one singular night of Lorenz Hart's life. And that night is when Oklahoma, which is Roger and Hammerstein's one of their most famous, of course, musicals, opens up. And how does somebody like Hart, who is a closeted gay man, who is an alcoholic, who is very much having demons in his life, who sees his muse as a person played by, of course, Margaret Qualley, how does he handle that? And that's what this movie kind of is explaining. It explains how flamboyant he was, how talkative he was, how much he just was into his alcoholism. And basically Ethan Hawke embodies the famous Hart individual in a night at a bar with people like, of course, Andrew Scott, who plays Richard Rodgers, and the bartender, who is played by Bobby Cannavale. And that story is this. It is basically the night of one individual at a bar named Lorenz Hart, who was a famous composer lyricist. So there you go. Richard Linklater is a director who, like Steven Soderbergh, is known for doing wildly different genres, wildly different types of movies, experimenting, going places that not a lot of directors are willing to go, embodies, imbues the nature of characterizations and the characters themselves. And from what I've seen from this movie, he really loves Lorenz Hart, wants to tell his story, but he's an individual that was overshadowed by Rodgers and Hammerstein, and he should be credited for his work. And that's what this movie is doing, but it also is telling about a guy who was very troubled, had a lot of alcoholism issues, had a lot of, not willing to accept who he is, and people had problems with him, including his kind of, work partner that was Rodgers of Rodgers and Hammerstein. So Richard Linklater is one of my favorite working directors. He has done some amazing stuff like the Before trilogy, of course, School of Rock, Boyhood and Days of Confused, and it goes on and on and on. Bernie was also another underrated movie that he's done, and he's had a few kind of clunkers, but for the most part, Richard Linklater is one of the most consistent directors working today. And then he has another one coming out this year that is a French film that is in French dialogue that is about, I think, Luc Godard or something like that. It's a very interesting career that Richard Linklater has done, because he hasn't gone into high budgeted movies. But the question really remains, and the question on everybody's mind, is whether this movie is any good, whether Richard Linklater is once again proving how good of a director he truly is. And that honest opinion is yes, this is a very competent movie. Is it his best movie? No, it really isn't. But the one thing I can say about this is his muse is Ethan Hawke, and it's very interesting to say, but I think this is Ethan Hawke's best performance, and that is saying a lot because Ethan Hawke has done some really incredible performances, whether it be like Boyhood or whatever he's done in his career, Gattaca and stuff like that. This is a movie where he actually embodies who Lorenz Hart was. He knows how his mannerisms. He studied up on him. Yeah, they probably took some flourishes and some liberties on, how his character played out, because he had a very tragic end where he died, of course, of a pneumonia, stuff like that, because he got really drunk. And there is demons at work that are playing out as he talks and he lies his way through everything. And he, chums up to Rodgers and Hammerstein and the people that are around him, and of course the bar, but he seems to have friends in low places. And Bobby Cannavale plays the current bartender that keeps feeding him his alcohol, and really is a really well put together character piece about who Lorenz Hart was, told through an hour and 45 minutes. And it's really an interesting movie. Like I said, it struggles because it is a little slow paced, and I think it could chop off about 15 minutes. But I think what Ethan Hawke is capable of doing is Oscar worthy material, Oscar nomination at least material. And he's so good at embodying the flourishes and the over flamboyancy and the drinking and just the nature of how he talks to people, how he can talk to, for instance, E.B. White, and he could talk to Andrew Scott, who plays Richard Rodgers, and he could talk to Hammerstein, he could talk to Margaret Qualley, who's his muse. And he just has all these stories, and he is very forceful with what he's trying to do, and it has him coming ahead of people like Rogers, who love him to death but see him as an issue in the life of filmmaking and theater production. And this is the guy that is known for doing music lyrics for Blue Moon and My Funny Valentine, which are very sad songs, and it's well put together. But there is a scene in this movie which I thought was kind of funny, where he's talking to E.B. White, and if you know E.B. White, what he's written and what he wrote in real life, and there is a little bit too on the nose about what Lorenz Hart says to him. So when you see it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I like the simple fact that this movie's small. It's set in one location. It doesn't have too many characters. It focuses on one character, and that character is exuded with confidence and exuded with smartness and like respectfulness, and it doesn't take anything back from what Lorenz Hart was, which was a very creative individual. And once again, I think Richard Linklater just does a capable job of portraying that individual and putting him out there in the open, and opening up him as a flawed individual, but as one that was beloved, and like people just, they want to listen to him talk because he's very charismatic and he's very over the top and silly. And when Margaret Qualley comes into the mix, she tells a story, or he tells a story that's just very enthralling, and there's stories that he tells that are very enthralling in this movie. Once again, it probably takes liberties on how these stories were told, whether they're like truthfully honest or not. It depends on how you feel about it. It is also the kind of culmination of like a new version of Connecticut Yankee. And overall, I think, to kind of really conclude this review, it's a movie that really puts its heart on its sleeve. It's something that Richard Linklater wanted to tell. It's very much in the vein of like I said, Bernie, or Boyhood, or even Days of Confused, where this individual, this director, knows how to write characters. I mean, you look at the Before trilogy; it's the same thing there. He's really good at just like creating really interesting dynamics and interesting characters, and taking what is real life individuals and throwing them out on the screen and just making a really interesting story. And that's all it is. It's an interesting story. Whether it gets any Oscar love, I don't know, but it definitely should for Ethan Hawke, who is, like I said, doing his best work in years and probably his best work ever, as Lorenz Hart, the individual who was, like I said, very flamboyant. And I know the muse usually means a woman, but here you can definitely tell Ethan Hawke and Richard Linklater have worked for years together, and it really shows because they have a great chemistry working off one another. It's like Leonardo DiCaprio and every director he works with. There's something that Ethan Hawke possesses that Richard Linklater loves, and it really shows on the screen. So that's my overall take on Blue Moon, the story of Lorenz Hart in the night as Oklahoma releases. It's a very good movie. It's very interesting. Was it one of my best of the year? I don't know, but it's definitely an honorable mention, so I'll give it that. So there you go. Anyways, that's my take on Blue Moon. I do appreciate you listening. I apologize for my voice. I'm losing my voice. But overall, in the comments below, if you've seen this movie, what do you think overall? What do you think of the characters? What do you think of Lorenz Hart as a lyricist? What do you know about him? All that good stuff. But let me know in the comments. Otherwise, if you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at top to find what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button. And as always, we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out, guys.